Good morning. This morning we're continuing our reading of The Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown. This reading is recorded with permission from Little Brown Books for Young Readers. Chapter 75. The Recos. 3 robots zipped down from the airship on cables. The ground shook as their heavy feet slammed against the cobblestones. When they stood side by side, forming a wall, with their eyes locked on Roz, their identity numbers could be easily read. They were Reco 4, Reco 5, and Reco 6. Hello, Rosum, Unit 7134. We are the Recos. Please come with us. The robotic voice belonged to Reco 4. He and his partners waited for their target to come forward. But Roz didn't move. She knew how dangerous the Recos could be, and so did her son. From somewhere in the sky, Brightbill's frightened voice cried out, "Run, Mama, run!" So Roz ran. She dashed up the pathway and leaped into the woods. Without crunching a weed. Here's a picture. Without crunching a weed, without rustling a leaf, the robot vanished into the thick foliage. The Recos weren't concerned. They had other ways of tracking her. Or so they thought. Their blocky heads swiveled from side to side, scanning the woods for Roz's electronic signal. They scanned, and scanned, and scanned, but they found no trace of their target. Chapter 76. The Morning. A steady stream of foot traffic was flowing past the park that morning. Several pairs of eyes noticed a Rosum robot running out from the trees. They watched as she looked around and then started marching along the sidewalk with the rest of the crowd. Roz had lost the Recos back in the woods, but she knew they wouldn't stop searching for her. She needed to blend in with the normal robots on the street. So when she came upon a work crew marching toward a construction site, she tried to join the end of the line. But the crew immediately halted and turned to face her. A robot stepped backward away from the crew and bumped into a young woman. "I am sorry," said Roz, gently grasping the woman's shoulder. "Get your hands off of me! Whose robot is this? There's something wrong with her!" Everyone stopped and stared. Humans pointed. Automobiles slowed. There were whispers about a defective robot on the loose. And when the white triangular airship appeared, it floated out from between tall buildings and headed for our robot. Roz lurched forward and backward, again and again, trying to think of a plan, until a voice suddenly squawked behind her. "Follow us, Mama!" Brightbill and Strutter swooped past, and the robot went racing after them. She wove through the crowd, sprinted down streets, and leaped across intersections. Horns blared, and humans screamed as robots shuffled out of the way. The birds made one last turn and fluttered into a narrow side street. A group of tomcats were there, lurking in the shadows. They crouched and licked their lips and dreamed of feasting on the goose and the pigeon. Then the robot came stomping up, and the cats hissed and scattered in every direction. Strutter pointed to a heavy circular panel set in the pavement and said, "Lift it up." Roz lifted the panel. Beneath it was a ladder that descended into a deep, dark hole. "Climb down there," said Strutter. "A friend of mine's expecting you." The robot looked from the pigeon to the goose. "Do what she says, Ma," cried Brightbill. "There's no time to waste." "But how will I find you again?" said Roz. "Just go!" Chapter 77. The Underground. A robot was standing in a long, shadowy tunnel. Murky water trickled along the floor, and foul, sour smells filled the air. Roz was below ground in the city sewers. There was a squeak, and the robot's headlights flashed onto a crack in the wall. A rat's pointy face poked out. "You must be Roz," said the rat, wiggling his nose. "I hear you're in trouble." "That is correct," said the robot. "I need to get as far away from here as possible." "I know just where to take you," said the rat, and he started scampering down the tunnel. The rat knew the sewers better than anyone, but his short legs couldn't carry him very fast. So Roz picked him up. She carried him, plopped on her shoulder, and said, "Tell me where to run." With the rat squeaking directions in her ear, Roz stomped deeper into the underground. She splashed down side tunnels, crawled through narrow passageways, carefully crossed subway tracks. Occasionally they came upon more cavernous chambers. Most of the chambers were empty, but some contained jumbles of pipes. Excuse me. The rat would scurry across the damp, dirty floor while the robot climbed the pipes as if they were trees. Mechanical sounds echoed from some of the tunnels. Robot crews were hard at work. They spent their lives laboring below the city. Many would never even see the light of day. Roz was curious, of course, but she dared not to spy on them. Those workers had no idea that a fellow robot was sneaking through their underground home. After traveling through miles of tunnels, the rat and the robot came to a dead end. A ladder was bolted to the wall and disappeared into a hole in the ceiling. "I don't know what you'll find up there," said the rat, "but good luck." "It cannot be any worse than where I was," said Roz, placing him on the ground. "Thank you for your help." The robot gave the rat a quick scratch behind his ears, and then she climbed up, back to the street. Chapter 78. The Chase. The street was empty. No people walking, no robots working, no automobiles driving. Roz looked to the sky, hoping to see Brightbill or Strutter. But what she saw was a fleet of white triangular ships. They were all floating over the city, searching for the runaway robot. And they had just spotted her. "Rosum Unit 7134, do not move." 3 robots zipped down from a ship on cables. They were Recos 10, 11, and 12. Each held a rifle at his side, but they didn't fire their weapons. Not yet. Their orders were to retrieve the target unharmed, if possible. Our robot's survival instincts blared like sirens in her head, and she burst away from the Recos. She sprinted down the empty street and turned onto another empty street. All the streets seemed to be empty, but they wouldn't be empty for long. More and more big, bulky robots came zipping down to join the chase. The Recos moved like machines. Their target moved like an animal. The wild robot stayed low, gliding across the streets, darting around buildings, vanishing into the shadows. Her computer brain thought back to those games of hide and seek she had played on the farm. But this was no game. Roz never should have gone into that alley. She was halfway through it when the Recos appeared at both ends. There was only one direction to go. Using all the strength in her legs, our robot launched herself high into the air, and she clamped onto the side of a building. Frightened faces peered out from a window, but Roz didn't want to frighten anyone. She just wanted to go home. The robot launched herself up and across the alley and clamped onto the opposite building. Back and forth she went, leaping between the buildings, climbing higher and higher, until she landed on a flat, lofty rooftop. The sky was filled with white airships. All at once, the ships turned toward Roz. The engines buzzed as they closed in on our robot. But then came a strange swishing noise. Pigeons. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Wave upon wave of pigeons streamed up from the streets and swarmed around the ships. Strutter had rallied her friends from every corner of the city. They had always hated airships, buzzing loudly, crowding the skies, forcing the birds to fly low. And now a city's worth of pigeons were finally unleashing their anger. As you'd expect, the airships fought back. Blazing beams of light flickered across the skyline and left charred feathers floating on the breeze. But the pigeons didn't retreat. They tightened around the airships, distracting them, confusing them. There was a deafening screech. Little bodies fell, and a ship spiraled out of sight, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. Roz watched in horror as more pigeons and ships went down. She hollered for the birds to fly away, but they were lost in a fighting frenzy. Heavy feet thumped on the roof. Rosum Unit 7134, do not move. Roz didn't look. She just ran from the voice, leaped to the next rooftop, and kept on running. Our robot leaped to a higher rooftop, and then down to a lower one. Up and down she went, leaping from building to building. Footsteps thundering behind her, but still, the Recos did not fire their rifles. Mama, I'm here! Brightbill swooped alongside his mother as she ran. What should we do? Brightbill, you must fly to safety, hollered Roz. It is too dangerous up here. And then in a softer voice, the robot said, I cannot escape. No, Mama, you've come so far. Don't give up now. But Roz was finished running. She slowed and stopped at the edge of the rooftop. The goose fluttered into her arms, and our friends held each other close. You have been such a good son, said Roz. You have saved my life so many times. But now you must save yourself and go on without me. Will I see you again? Said Brightbill, wiping his eyes. I do not think so, said Roz. They still had so much to say to each other. There simply wasn't any more time. So they said the only words that really mattered. I love you, Mama. I love you, son. Airships circled above. Recos dropped onto rooftops. Rifles pointed at our robot. A voice boomed. Rosum Unit 7134, do not move. But Roz did move. She heaved her son toward the sky so that he could fly to safety. And in that instant, a trigger was pulled. A blazing beam of light blasted onto our robot's leg. Damage sensors flared as the leg turned bright orange and melted away. Poor Roz tried to keep her balance, but she was already toppling backward off the roof. She seemed to hang in the air, sparkling in the sunlight. And then she fell down, down, down to the street below. As Roz was falling, she took one last look at Brightbill soaring in the sky above. She watched him get smaller and smaller. Then everything suddenly went dark.